Hello, dear students, and how are you? I hope all of you are fine and enjoying your time in some productive stuff. So, today again I am here with the social science classes, and today we are going to start history part. Today I will give you the first part of the fourth chapter of history. So, let's have a look what is the fourth chapter, that is the tribal communities and the colonial states. Today I am going to provide you the first part of this chapter. So, students, as all of you are knowing that, or all of you are knowing about the tribal communities. About the tribals, we have learned in class 7th also, and we are knowing that tribals are the people, those who live in forest, or they move from one place to another with their animals. This also we have learned that tribal communities has their own customs and rituals. We have learned about many tribal communities in class 7th, like we have learned about the Gonds, we have learned about Rani Durgavati, we have learned about the Ahom rulers. Okay, so these were the tribal communities that we have learned about in class 7th in the medieval period, and now we are going to see the tribal communities, those who were famous during the modern period. And what were the effect of the colonial rule over the tribal communities? So let's start the chapter, and the chapter starts with the story of Birsa Munda. Birsa Munda was a person. Okay, so in 1895, a man named Birsa was seen roaming the forest and villages of Chota Nagpur Plateau in Jharkhand. A man named Birsa Munda was seen roaming in the forest of Chota Nagpur Plateau, that the place is in Jharkhand. People believe that this person has some miraculous powers, some magical powers, and he could cure all diseases and multiply grains. People believe that this person has some magical power, and he's God himself sent Birsa Munda to earth for the welfare of the people. And Birsa himself declared that God had appointed him to save his people from trouble. Okay, so basically, there was a man whose name was Birsa Munda, and he belongs to Munda tribe. Munda was a tribal society, a tribal community that lives in the Jharkhand Chota Nagpur plateau. So people believe that he is having some miraculous magical power, that he can cure diseases also and even multiply the grains also. So that was the reason only, and he also declared himself that God has appointed him to save him for the his people from trouble and free them from the slavery of Dikus, that is the outsiders. Here the Dikus word or the outsider word is used for the Britishers. Now, there were some more tribal groups that were living in Jharkhand only. Those were Santhals and Orans. Okay, so they also started following Birsa and started believing that Birsa was a god. All of them, in different ways, were unhappy with the changes they were experiencing and the problems they were facing under the British rule. Every tribal community was totally unhappy and very disturbed by the changes that Britishers were introducing in their forests. So that is why they also started following Birsa Munda, so that he can free themselves or them from the British rule. So Munda was born in Munda tribe. Munda tribe basically was a tribe that belonged to Chota Nagpur region in Jharkhand. As you can see in this map, in Jharkhand you can see Santhals, Munda and Orans. All three tribal communities were there. Okay. So let's start a chapter. In this chapter we are going to learn about what problems did Birsa set out to resolve. What were the basic problems that Birsa wanted to resolve? We will see who were the outsiders being referred to as Dikus. We will see that who is referred as Dikus, how they enslaved the tribals, what was happening to the tribal people under the British, and how did their lives change. Okay, so all these things we are going to learn in this chapter. So let's start with the first topic, that is tribal communities before the British rule. Students, in class 7th also we have learned about some of the characteristics of the tribal people. We are knowing that tribal people usually lives in forest, and there are wide range of tribal communities in India. They lived in dense forest. It is very difficult to define a tribe given the range of customs and rituals. We have learned this also, that these tribals are having their different cultures, their different customs and their different rituals. They follow different economic and social practices. Okay, so they were different from the mainstream society. This we have learned in class 7th only. So let's have a look that how tribal communities were living before the colonial period started in India. So first of all, the different tribal groups have different customs and rituals. Each tribe used to live in some clan or group. The clan of 50 or 25 people, they used to live in a clan, and basically they used to follow different customs and rituals. Each tribal society, and this also we have learned in class 7th only, that these tribal societies do not follow any caste system. According to them, all of them were equal, and their political system was based on family or kinship ties. Basically they used to belong, that means one family or the family members became a clan, and they only became a community. Okay, so they believe in family and kinship ties. There was a tribal chief in every tribal community who administered them. This also we have learned, that every has a tribal chief. The work of that tribal chief is to administer whole community. Now, tribal people adopted different ways to secure livelihood. This also we have learned, that tribal peoples were just like early humans. So tribal people adopted various ways to earn their livelihood. Let's have a look what they were doing for earning their livelihood. How did tribal groups live? How they were living? So first of all, we will see some were jhum cultivators. We learned about the jhum cultivation. So some were jhum cultivators, some were hunters and gatherers, some herded animals, some used to herd or rear animals, and some took settled cultivation, and some of them were doing settled cultivation also. So let's have a look and learn about the jhum cultivation. Jhum cultivation, all of us are knowing that what is jhum cultivation. We have learned about jhum cultivation earlier also. So what was jhum cultivation specially? Some of the tribal communities used to practice jhum cultivation, that is also known as shifting cultivation. We are knowing that shifting cultivation was a type of agriculture that was done on small patches of land, mostly in forest. What happened in this type of cultivation? The cultivators cut the tree tops to allow sunlight to reach the ground. They used to cut the trees first and burnt the vegetation on the land to clear it for cultivation. And later on, after cutting the trees, they used to burn that the vegetation that was available there, to so that they can clear the land for the cultivation. They spread the ash from the firing, which contained potash, to fertilize the soil. Okay, then they spread the ash on the land that provide fertility to the soil. They use the axe to cut trees and hoe to scratch the soil in order to prepare it for cultivation. They use different weapons for doing this. So after cleaning the forest, they used to broadcast the seeds, okay, and they used to sow the seeds in those fields. Once the crop was ready and harvested, they moved to another field. We are knowing that once the soil loses its fertility, people used to leave that land and go to another land, clear that forest, and started doing shifting cultivation at that forest. So this was the major feature or major characteristic of the tribal group during the colonial period. They were doing jhum cultivation. Okay, so basically, jhum cultivation is also known as shifting cultivation. It was majorly practiced in hilly region of northeast, As you can see in this picture, northeast part of India, that is having seven states, seven sisters we have learned about, that is having seven states, and all those states were usually following the set this one jhum cultivation only. And some parts of central India also follows jhum cultivation, in which forest is first cleared and then cultivation is done on that land. Okay, so this was our tribal groups for following shifting cultivation. The next feature was that they were hunters and gatherers. Okay, so they were basically hunters and gatherers. What they usually do, they totally depend upon forest for their essentials, as they were tribals. They do not engage to the mainstream society, and they depend on the forest product only for their survival. Some tribes are Khons of Orissa and Bags of central India follow the practice of hunting and gathering. So here some of the tribal communities are mentioned, those who were following hunting and gathering. What they used to do, they hunt collectively, their whole clan hunt collectively, and after the hunting they used to divide the meat among themselves. Later on, they also used to gather fruits and roots for their food. Fruits and roots, okay? So they used to extract oil from the seeds to cook their food from the sal and mahua tree. They used many forest shrubs and herbs for medicinal purposes also. They used to, whatever herbs and shrubs are available in the forest, they used to use it for the medicines. They sold forest produce to the local markets. This also we have learned in class 7th only, that the whatever they used to produce from the forest, okay, whether it is honey or jute or any forest produce, they used to sell it in the markets, local markets that are situated or located nearby their houses. So the Khond, in your book it is given, the Khond tribe, okay, they used to sold kusum and palash flowers to local weavers and leather workers. This is the example that how they used to sell their products. Okay, so they used to sell the kusum and palash flower to the leather and weaver workers, those who need these flowers to color their clothes. So basically, as you can see, this is palash flower, and this is first one is the kusum flower, and the next one is the palash flower. Okay, so next, from where did these forest people get their supplies of rice and other grains? So from the forest, so they were to getting fruits, okay, and roots, but their essentials or the other food grains, from where they get all these food grains. So for the need of the food grains, they usually depend on the nearby places. Okay, so what they used to do, they used to depend on barter system. That means they exchange their products to the products that they need from their nearby locals. Okay, so getting what they return in return for their valuable forest produced. Sometimes they used to bought goods, okay, from the nearby when they used to sell their goods. So from that, the money that they get from that only, they used to purchase the things that they need, and that they do not get from forest. Next, they used to work as laborers, or they used to carry the load of others. Okay, they used to work as agricultural laborers, and they also used to work in the roads construction, the roads that were constructed by the Britishers. They used to work as laborers for those roads. Okay, now in that case also, if they were not able to fulfill their needs, so they depend on the money lenders. They depend on the money lenders, and these money lenders used to give them money and take high prices on interest and take high interest over it. So they also depend on money lenders for loans, with which the tribals met their cash needs, adding to what they earned. Whenever they were in need of cash, they used to ask money from the money lenders. Now, animal herders. The tribal communities were animal herder also. So they used to rear animals, and they used to move from one place to another with their animals. Okay, so they used to rear animals according to the seasons. When wherever there is pastures, they used to live that place, and when the pasture exhausted from that place, they used to move from that place, as we have learned about early humans also. Now, many tribal groups lived by herding and rearing animals. Many of the people used to live and earn by this only. They were pastoralist. Pastoralist means those who move from one place to another with their herd of cattle. That means group of animals. One Gujars of Punjab and Labadis of Andhra Pradesh were cattle herders. The two tribal groups, the one Gujars of Punjab and Labadis, they were the herders. The Gaddis of Kullu, that is Himachal Pradesh, were shepherds, and the Bakarwals of Kashmir used to rear goods. So next is settled life. There were some tribal communities, those who lived settled life. Settled life means they used to grow crop at one place, and they used to live at that place for many years. They used to build their temporary houses also. So basically, many tribal groups began settling even before the 19th century. From before the 19th century only, many tribal groups started settling. Like we were talking about the Munda tribe was also the tribe that led the settled life. They began cultivation and settling at one place instead of moving from one place to another. They started cultivation and they started living near their fields only. Mundas and Senthals of Jharkhand and Gonds were the settled tribes. Here are the example of some of the settled tribes. The part of land began to whole clan, and every member had same rights on land. Sometimes the land belongs to whole community, whole clan. Okay, so but after that also everyone was having equal rights on that land, and whatever they used to produce on that land, they used to share it among themselves. Sometimes it happened that the chief was having the right on whole land, and the chief was also having the right to rent that land to the people, those who need it. Okay, so next is, how did colonial rule affect tribal lives? How did the colonial or the British Empire affected the tribal people? So let's have a look. So basically, first we will see what happened to tribal chiefs. As we are knowing that the tribal chief played an important role in the tribal community, as he was the head of the tribal community and he used to administer them. He used to impose rules and regulation, and so the tribal chief was just like the king of the territory. Okay, so the tribal chief enjoyed certain economic power and had the right to administer and control their territories. He was like the king of the tribal community. But under the Britishers, the functions and powers of the chief changed. The functions and powers of the tribal chief also changed later on. So they also, the Britishers allowed the tribal chiefs that yes, they can hold their titles of whatever land they are having. They can have their land, and they can also rent land to other people, but they lost their administrative power and were forced to follow laws made by British officials. Before the arrival of the Britishers, the tribal chiefs were only the head of the tribal communities. But as the Britishers arrived to the forest areas, they, they restricted the administrative powers of the tribal chief, and this makes certain laws that chief also has to follow. They force the tribal chief to pay some tribute in the form of gifts to the Britishers. They told the tribal chief that you have to pay us some tribute or the gifts that from the forest only. Okay, and the Britishers told the tribal chief that he had to maintained discipline in the tribal group on behalf of the Britishers. So all these things annoyed the tribals, because now the tribal chief was not having his own right over his tribal community, and the Britishers restricted their power. So this made the tribals very oppressive against the Britishers. Now the Britishers wanted the tribals. Now we will see what happened to shifting cultivators. Okay, now Britishers wanted shifting cultivators to start doing settled agriculture. They forced the shifting cultivators to started settled cultivation. Now, as we have learned that the Britishers introduced land revenue system in the outside areas or in the village areas of India. Now Britishers started coming towards the forest for earning or getting more and more revenue. they come and they can get that revenue collectively, or we can say that now regular amount of revenue can only be collected by the Britishers when people of the forest or the tribal groups started doing settled agriculture, because that settled agriculture will give them good amount of revenue and regular amount. Okay, so the Britishers wanted the tribals to settle down and became peasant cultivators. Okay, because they wanted a regular revenue sources from the tribals. For that, they introduced land settlements in the tribal regions also. They used to administer the land, they used to fix the land revenue, and they also used to define the rights over land. Okay, earlier the whole forest belongs to the tribal communities only. There was no one to interfere to in the life of these tribals, but the Britishers interfere in the life of these tribals, and they introduced land settlement system in the tribal regions also. But the Britishers' efforts to settle jhum cultivation was not very successful. But Britishers do not successful that much in settling the jhum cultivation. There was a reason, because basically the jhum cultivation was practiced in the hilly areas, and near the hilly areas all the regions are not good for agriculture. So there are the jhum cultivators of northeast India. They insisted the Britishers that you have to allow us to continue the jhum cultivation, and they protested also when the Britishers do not listen. Why they were doing all this and they were not ready to do settled agriculture? Because the settled cultivation was not possible in the areas where water is scarce and where land is very dry. All these reasons were resulted the people or the person or the tribals, those who belong to the areas where the land is not good, the land is dry, or the water is very scarce, there they were not able to produce good yield. And if they were not able to produce good yield, from where they will give the revenue to the Britishers? That is only the reason that they requested, or they basically insisted the Britishers to allow them to do the shifting cultivation in those areas. At last, the Britishers had to ultimately allow them the right to carry on shifting cultivation in some parts of the forest. Later on, the Britishers allowed them also that yes, they can do the shifting cultivation in the restricted part, in some part only. Now we will see Britishers introduced forest laws also. Now the Britishers introduced different forest laws. What they did exactly, the Britishers extended their control over forest and declared forest as state property. As I have explained you geography, that the forest are the biggest natural resource for the humans, and that Britishers were also knowing. So that is why they declared that forest is the state property, and according to that they passed a number of forest acts by 19th century. They introduced many forest acts, and according to those forest acts, now some forests are classified as reserved forest. That means for they produce timber which the British wanted. Okay, so the forest that produces good quality of timber, that is required for the furniture making, and that is having demand for the as raw materials in the European countries, so that Britishers declared as reserve forest. Now what was in the reserve forest? Basically in the reserve forest people were not allowed to move freely. Now the tribals were only not allowed to move freely in the forest. Where they will go? So they were not allowed to practice jhum cultivation in reserve forests. Even they were not allowed to collect fruits or hunt animals in those reserve forests. So, are you able to understand that what was exactly happening with the tribals when the colonials came to India? When the colonials started extending towards the forest, the tribals slowly started losing their rights from the forest. Now we will see the problem with the trade. There was a problem with the trade also, because the people, those who were selling goods to different markets, So now the Britishers started exploiting those traders or the local traders also. What happened during the 19th century? Tribal groups found that traders and moneylenders were coming into the forest more often. They saw that now the traders and moneylenders are also coming to the forest. Why they were coming to the forest? For the forest produce, wanting to buy forest produce. Okay, so they offer cash loans also to the tribes and asking them to work for wages. Many, like, if timber was only needed, if woods were only needed for the import to the, for selling it to the European countries, for that purpose also their laborers were needed to cut the trees. Okay, so basically they came to the forest areas. The money lenders and the traders come to the forest areas. They used to hire laborers and they give them very low wages. Okay, so it took tribal groups some time to understand the consequences of what was happening. Earlier the tribals were not able to understand that what was going on, but later on the tribals understand that what exactly is going on. So let us consider, I am giving you one example. There was a place in Hazaribagh. Okay, Hazaribagh is in Jharkhand. This was the area where the Santhals reared cocoons. All of you are knowing what is cocoons. Okay, the silkworms from which they used to make silk. Okay, so this is basically the cocoons from which silk was, they were making the silk. So what happened? In the 18th century, Indian silk was in great demand in European markets because the quality of Indian silk was very fine and was highly valued, and exports from India increased rapidly. And since the quality of the Indian silk was very good, that is why its exports started increasing. As the market of the silk expanded, English East India Company official tried to encourage silk production to meet the growing demand. Okay, so for that only the traders dealing in silk sent in their agent who gave loans to the tribal people. Okay, so they used to purchase the cocoons at a very less price from the tribals. I think they only pay 3 to 4 rupees for thousand of cocoons from the tribals, and they used to sell that cocoons to the market at 5 multiply more times than they used to purchase that cocoons from the tribals. Okay, so they basically started gaining more and more profit in this local trade also, and they started exploiting the tribals. The silk growers earned very little, and slowly, many tribal groups started realizing that the Britishers are becoming their enemies in the field of trade also. Now, later on, by seeing that they are not, they are, when they were not allowed to collect food from the forest also, they were not allowed to continue jhum cultivation also. So later on they started moving towards or in search of new jobs or new works. At that time only tea plantation was very common in India, and mining also started gaining importance. So basically, the tribals started moving towards w- working to these tea plantation and in the mining sites of Jharkhand and tea plantation in Assam. These tribal people were recruited through contractors, and these contractors pay them very low wages and preventing them from returning home. Even the tribals were also not allowed to return home. That means they were forced to work as forced laborers at a very low wages in the tea plantation and in the mining sites also. So what we have learned till now in the chapter, we have learned that how the life of the tribals changed when the Britishers or the colonial power came to India. Okay, so this all we have seen that how the Britishers started exploiting the tribals also. Now In the second part of this chapter, I will explain you that all these exploitation of the Britishers against the tribals resulted in the number of revolts between the Britishers and the tribals in India. We will learn about various revolts between or various revolts that took place between the Britishers and the tribal communities. We will learn about the Santhal revolt, we will learn about the Birsa Munda revolt, and we will also learn about the Khols revolt, Khasi revolt. Okay, so this is all for today, students. Thank you.